welcome to the Anacortes City Council meeting of August 25th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Franciac, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Fantini.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Cleland McGrath. Ms. Moulton.
Here.
Mr. McDougall. Ms. Hubick.
Here.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
I move to excuse Councilmember McDougall tonight.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Ms. Hubick to excuse Councilmember McDougall. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, announcements and committee reports. First, I've got a few. Just another update on the draft comprehensive plan. So the formal comment period, I'll remind everybody that closes August 28th, and that's after the public hearing that is this Wednesday, the 27th. But of course, we will still take public comment, but our formal comment period is the 28th, so that's the best time to get your comments in. The comprehensive plan is, as the outline, a vision for the next 20 years and addresses key areas such as housing, transportation, environment, economic development, climate, and community services and facilities. Draft plan is available on our website, and comments may be submitted via email to complan@anacorteswa.gov. Or again, please attend the Planning Commission public hearing on August 27th, 6 p.m. right here, and that's this Wednesday. Solid waste schedule. So Labor Day, September 1st, that's this Monday. There will be no garbage service on Monday, and collection will take place on Tuesday for those of you who normally get collection on the 1st. Waste Management follows our schedule for recycling and yard waste. And again, as Labor Day is the traditional last hurrah or vacation, or lots of people driving, please be safe when you're out driving this weekend. There'll be a council meeting, will be on Tuesday instead of Monday next week. A couple weeks out, I feel I should highlight some events to mark on your calendar. I always mark this one. This is Residential Cleanup Day, Saturday, September 13th. So this is bring your residential garbage and yard waste to the operations facility, no charge, and that's Saturday, September 13th, 9 to 12, and you do have to bring proof of residency, so a utility bill or something that's got your address on it. Also, the same day, September 13th, so you can start working your plan around the 13th, Anacortes Senior Activity Center will host the Senior Resource Fair from 10 to 2. This is a free event. More than 60 businesses, nonprofits, and other agencies will be on site to share information about healthcare, financial support, and community programs, and much more. Also, so I hear there's some prizes and good stuff there as well. Also, the 13th, Fidalgo Bay Day, and this is sponsored by Skagit Marine Resources Committee and Friends for a free, fun family outing at the Samish Indian Nation's Fidalgo Bay Resort, and that's 11 to 3. So all are welcome, and this event celebrates our local estuaries and history and marine life. So lots of stuff on September 13th, so just plan your whole day around those events. All right, over to council reports. The first one is Planning Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
The Planning Committee met right before this meeting at our regularly scheduled and advertised time. We first of all talked about a constituent inquiry about how you can build housing on a vacant lot when that vacant lot exists in the middle of a block with no access to it. And generally, development has to build access to their parcels, especially for fire truck, et cetera. But that can certainly be expensive and make housing infeasible for a small number of units for an expensive road. We didn't come up with any solutions, and neither did anybody else. So it may just be that is how that works. But the department is going to think further about it. We reviewed the FutureWise versus Mercer Island Growth Board case, where the Growth Board re-emphasized our obligation to plan for sufficient middle housing as part of our comp plan update to meet our housing requirements, especially the housing requirements that are distributed by income segment, and our obligation to document and show our work to ensure we are making adequate progress, or adequate provision, that's the quote from the statute, for housing for all income segments, which is a high hurdle to achieve, but it's what we more or less understood the task to be to begin with. And so we are continuing work on that, and we will strive to make sure that we are achieving the Growth Board's articulated standards. We talked about the Housing Authority's Olson Building project and how we can make sure that it's set up so that we can continue to move forward with that, or that the AHA can, especially with provision for parking for it. And then I have a reminder that the Skagit North Star project is having its housing forum with Greg Colburn, the UW professor and author of Homelessness as a Housing Problem, on September 9th, which is a Wednesday, is a Tuesday, I think that's right. Tuesday, September 9th at 6 to 8 p.m. at the Mount Vernon Library Commons. And you need to go to North Star Skagit and register in advance because they're running out of space already at that. I also have an update from the meeting that we attended, that I attended along with representatives from other cities and the county last week with respect to the North Star interlocal agreement. We talked about a number of provisions in the agreement which the county staff had generated in draft form. There's a lot of duplication in it, so a lot of our comments were just about reducing duplication. We wanted to make sure that it didn't box the city in too much. So for example, North Star in the past has said we want to dedicate all of our energy and money to helping the people that need help the most, which by itself and in isolation is not a bad principle. But if you spend all your money there, do you have any money left over to help the people that need a little bit of help? And are you maximizing for the number of people that we want to help? So we tried to avoid language like that. We also tried to make sure that we weren't boxing ourselves into using the framework that they'd have articulated at their previous meetings. Maybe the mayor can help me remember what it's called. It's the civic muscle and all of those concepts, because we might use that, we might not. It's more mechanical rather than at the level of interlocal agreement. We also talked about articulating not very much of the structure of the North Star project in the interlocal so that can be fleshed out going forward. So I think what we landed on is ensuring that the leadership team is described and the rest of it is left to be figured out in the future. County staff are going to generate a revised version of the agreement based on this feedback that was given by all the cities. And then they have a schedule, which I don't have right in front of me, to get that out to the councils and to the city's attorneys, I think by the end of September, and they're planning a joint meeting. I'll find that schedule and get it sent out. But they anticipate a joint meeting with representatives from the cities and then distributing it out to get adopted by each city individually. I think all in all the cities and the county were very much in agreement on all of the terms, and they liked the edits that I articulated, which were mostly based on our discussion of more than a year ago when that former interlocal was in front of us.
All right, I may have lost my North Star card because I can't remember the name of that civic muscle wheel either, but any questions for Planning Committee? All right, next up is Parks and Recreation Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee met on last week, Thursday. It was Mr. Lunsford, Carl from the Senior Center, Nicole from the department as well, Mr. Volks, as well as Dustin South and myself. We had a lengthy discussion about everything that was taking place. It's a lot going on, and we even began our conversation by talking about pickleball. We know that can be challenging for some and others that love it. So the discussion still continues, but the good news about it was the outcome is that they're still looking for options to try to figure out how they can begin to address the need for pickleball without, sort of impeding on the school districts. So we talked about that. Carl came up next from the Senior Center, and he was talking about events, and the mayor's mentioned that about already the Senior Resource Fair that's coming up on the 13th from 10 to 2, and it's kind of an open house with all of the partners. So I think it would be a great place to go and visit and sort of learn about what's really taking place all across the city. Also, we talked about Washington Parks events that's taking place. We talked about the foundation retreat, that the Senior Center may do a electronic front desk kind of check-in to sort of facilitate and give people a chance to sort of figure out what they want to do, know what's happening. It's all concise, but that's the vision forward. They're still looking into the remodel. Nicole spoke about the park's maintenance technician job, that there were 64 applicants for it. That's a lot of applicants. And, they hope to have someone hired in September, but again, that's to be determined as things move forward as they vet the candidates. I was also told Washington Park has been full every week. And I think that says a lot. H.F. Sinclair and their group of about 40 people will do a work day at, I think it's Tulsi Park. Am I saying that right? Okay, and they're funding it all. So the city has no cost associated with that, but that's a wonderful gift to our city. Dustin South talked about the summer enrichment camps were successful, and they are now heavily into soccer. They've got 550 kids. Can you imagine? 550 kids. That says a lot. And each day of games in September at the Kiwanis Meadows Volunteer Park. There's also another event coming up on October 18th, Mount Erie Run, October 25th, the Haunted Forest. Volunteers are needed, so if it makes you happy to have good fun fear, come on out. The parks can really use your help at that. Some people really get a joy out of it. I did, when we were having Halloween at our house. Personally, we had a little girl that could scream high-pitched, and so I'd come out with shears on and beads, and so candy would be all over the yard running. Okay, that was part of the fun, but I saw the error of my ways and and changed that, but I thought that was a little sad. So if it makes you happy being out there, please volunteer. There's also a Wonderland Walk this Christmas, December 12th and 13th, and they're always looking for volunteers, always looking for volunteers. So if you could, please volunteer there. Open Streets, we just had that, so I won't go there on that. Phase 2 of the skate park is moving forward. The design, bathrooms, the CXT restroom that will serve both the Tommy Thompson and skate park. The thing I wanted to say about the Parks and Rec department, just really listening to all of the things that they had going on, especially with reduced staff and comprehensively serving the whole city to make it as fun as it is. I really wanted to applaud John and his team for the hard work that they put in. Sometimes it's, as a public servant, sometimes the appreciation is a little less than deserved, but being a public servant is an honor. And so I'm thankful for the Parks and Rec department and the leadership that they have bringing forward the things for the city of Anacortes. Thank you.
When you mention soccer, not only can I imagine it, but I've lived it with my kids, and both whether they're playing or whether they were coaching or reffing, and I can tell you what a great positive experience that has been for my kids participating in that for now that they're old. So any questions for Parks and Recs Committee? Any other committee reports or announcements I may have missed?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. I do just want to touch on open streets for a moment. I don't remember if it's the 12th or the 13th that we had on Sunday, but it was a resounding success. It's the one day of the year where you have to look down at knee level and make sure you don't get taken out by like someone small on the scooter, and it's awesome, actually. They just take over the road. It's fun for all ages, and it just was a really huge success, and city staff helps with that, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and Josh Gates is one of the main movers on that now, and he's sort of taking the baton from Warren Tesler and John Pope and Steve John, have shepherded it all these years, so it's really great to see kind of the next generation stepping up and a little bit of that transition. So thanks to everyone who made that happen. Thanks to everyone who showed up. It really was great. And the other thing also the Rockfish had their 25th anniversary celebration, so there was live music in the street as well. And so that was a great compliment to the event. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I am going to be at the Senior Center Wednesday at 1:30 for a coffee with a council member. So that's open to all, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other ones that I missed? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. So we did receive and published in the packet 2 written public comments, Bill Turner and Ian Muntz. I didn't have anybody sign up tonight. Anybody wish to address the council on anything that's not on our agenda? Again, it always helps to sign up. All right, I will move on to our consent agenda, 5A through D. Council,
Mayor Miller,
Ms. Hubick.
make a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Hubick, a second by Mr. Fantini to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are on to item 6, which is other business, and starting off with 6A. This is a Chamber of Commerce presentation, Marketing Anacortes, tourism that boosts our local economy presentation, and Mr. Coleman will introduce. Mr. Coleman.
Good evening, council, members of the public. Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to briefly introduce, I'm John Coleman, the Director of the Planning, Community, and Economic Development Department. Just want to make a brief introduction to Jessica Kaiser, who's the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. And as the Mayor mentioned, she's going to be talking about marketing Anacortes and their tourism efforts, largely a lot of which are paid for by our lodging tax advisory, lodging tax funds for marketing through the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommendations and council approvals. So with that, Jessica.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So with me today, I also have our marketing partner, Chance Newman of Last Chance Productions. Together, we're entrusted with the important work of telling the story of Anacortes, sharing our city's many assets, resources, businesses, restaurants, and unique attractions that make visitors want to come here, stay here, and return again in the future. So this evening, Chance and I will briefly walk you through the progress we've made this year in our digital outreach, our pacing reach, and measurable results we've seen so far, and then share a look ahead at our 2025-26 advertising strategy, which takes a more targeted approach by using traveler personas.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Hi, Amanda. I started working with Anacortes in 2016, and so we've had a lot of advances in digital marketing over the years, and so I wanted to kind of run through where we are to date from our January to August pacing. So we are running across many of the streaming services that you see here. This is kind of a combination of all of the networks that we've run since January, and been in some pretty high-profile programming, such as the finals in NBA, the WNBA, and then always running across like Hulu, HGTV, Food Network. Our goal is to target the traveler enthusiast coming, from 50 miles away, coming from out of town. And so just kind of wanted to go over a brief update on where we are to date. So total impressions were about 1,357,000, which is about 108% pacing. So you want to be at least to 100% pacing. So we're pacing ahead of that right now with everything that we're running. Our click-through rates on our creative, on our display, is about 3 times the industry standard for that. So it's like a 0.08 is the industry standard. We're at a 0.22. And then a video completion rate, which that just means if you have a 15-second or a 30-second commercial, that in this case, 93% of all the people that are served that ad see it all the way to the end of the 15 or the 30 seconds. And then we have the most important thing really is the retargeting pixel. We place that on all the pages, so as people are coming to seeing the internet sites and looking at the different advertising that we've got, when they click on it and go to the website, we're able to retarget that group once they have been there and left. So you've all seen this. If you've searched for something and you're like, hey, magically that pair of shoes is following me around the internet, that's how we're able to do that. So this just kind of gives you an idea of where those impressions are running. So heaviest in like the northern Seattle area, but definitely all over, pretty evenly distributed. And that's going to be everything from display ads to video ads to 14 by 48 foot billboards that we run, airport advertising. So it's a lot of different medias that we have running across the campaigns. This is strictly just ferry terminal groups, so we're targeting people that are in and around these ferry terminals. I can see it on my end, but it's about 97% is in the Anacortes ferry terminal. These are people that are coming through, from outside the city of Anacortes and traveling to and from these islands by ferry. Just an example of anywhere these ads might run, whether that's streaming on a connected TV device, a smart TV, a desktop or a laptop, your mobile phone, even a charging station. We have a lot of different kinds of out-of-home options as well, or even that 14 by 48 foot billboard. In the airport, this is going to run throughout these airports. These are targeting travel enthusiasts, at the source at the airport. Payne Field recently added a nonstop flight to Denver, so we added Denver here about 2 months ago. So that reaches the people that are in the baggage terminals, people that are in the airports themselves, wherever they might be walking through the airport. And then Jessica's going to talk about the visitor personas and where we'll be leading with that into 2026.
So a little bit more, visitor personas means taking like a deeper dive into the mindset of our ideal Anacortes visitor, understanding not just who they are, but what motivates them, so that we can speak to them more personally and more effectively and invite them to experience everything our community has to offer. So the Coastal Family Explorer is one of the personas. This is our primary focus for key growth segment. This persona represents families looking for meaningful memory-making experiences. So think tide pools, ferry rides, kayaking, post-adventure ice cream downtown, typically in their 30s to early 50s, and these working parents from the Puget Sound area or nearby metros, they value affordability, convenience, and educational fun. They are not looking for Disneyland, they want discovery. And when we show them what Anacortes is safe, it's nature-forward base camp with an authentic coastal charm, they come and they come back again. Targeting them through streaming video, social, and family travel content channels gives us direct return in lodging and dining revenue. So not going to the next one. There we go. The Freedom Cruiser, also a top priority persona, one of the highest spenders. These are the older, higher income recreational boaters, often retired or semi-retired. They're exploring the Salish Sea on their own terms and want reliable quality stops with amenities. They appreciate marina access, good dining, art galleries, and walkability. They travel by boat and they spend like land-based tourists, supporting restaurants, marine trades, and shops. So marketing to them means showing up in nautical publications, boat shows, and online marina maps. We aim for a dock and stay package and marine services promotion. So for the next one, the remote escapee, AKA the mobile professional. These are the younger remote workers who blend work and travel. They want fast Wi-Fi, boutique lodging, and coffee shops near trails. They're more flexible on travel dates, making them ideal shoulder season guests, and we reach them through social channels, digital interest blogs, and co-working networks. The rugged weekender, AKA the young adventure couple, they want coastal hiking, kayak selfies, and craft beer, all in one weekend. Tech savvy and spontaneous, they'll book via Instagram or the influencer stories. They want a weekend getaway, and we'll send campaigns and visual first aids, like reels that make the biggest impact with them. And then the last one is the cultured collector. So this persona includes retired professionals aged 60 plus with disposable income and a refined taste for the arts. They're drawn to destinations that offer cultural depth. Think galleries, live theaters, wine tasting, heritage stays. They're loyal, thoughtful travelers who seek quality over novelty. We target them with messaging around Anacortes galleries using historic charm, videos of live performances, and culinary experiences, placed strategically in digital news platforms, airport ads, and arts-focused media. So the main thing with each persona is that they respond to different platforms, different messages, and different offers. Instead of general ads that hope to catch someone, persona-based marketing puts the right message in the right place at the right time, maximizing the results on their ROI. So thank you guys for your time and attention. Please let us know if you have any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Jessica. Council, questions?
Mel Miller?
Mr. Young.
Thank you. Fabulous presentation. It really does segment, the various people that are coming here, and it also gives us the tools that we need in order to directly go after them, so we can go after them in the way we want as a city, meaning those revenues that are needing to come, or given right now, given the budgets, we have to compete, and it's good to have these tools and the work that's being put in to analyze who they are, what they are, and how we approach them. If I could ask, I would love to review this again. Is it possible to share this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I would love that. That way, we can get together and do some additional talk about the Economic Development Committee and sort of meeting and trying to figure out how we can partner with all of the stakeholders in order to move forward some of the agenda items that we may think. But it is wonderful, and I appreciate that. I also particularly like that in the people that you were showing and displaying, they were diverse, which represents the real people of our world, and I really appreciated that too. So thank you very much.
Well, yeah, certainly that'll be made available to council, but for the public, it'll be part of our packet, final packet, those slides. Any other questions, council?
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just had a question. When you were kind of showing the maps on where we're advertising and where the leads are coming from, we are, and I'm sure there's a good reason for this, we are located very close to Canada, and
Yes.
we do still see, even with everything going on, we do still see
Thank you
a
for
lot
that
of
question.
Canadian visitors,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering.
So we toned it down a little bit towards the beginning of the year. We did have a placement in BC. But you're absolutely right. That's such a close place to draw from. So we're starting to see more, license plates on cars coming down this way. So we're adding more BC back into that. But it's definitely, a good area to tap into because it's such a heavily populated city and close.
Sure.
Yep, great
Okay.
question.
And then I really like, this kind of drip campaign across all the different platforms. Are you seeing anything like, is there any certain media that you're seeing like a stronger response from, like phones or?
Yeah, so streaming video and audio is a little bit harder to measure because, it's something you watch, you can't go up and tap on your TV screen. So that's for your high reach, big impact media message. So when we look at what we've been doing is more of a broad base, and now we're going to get down to those individual segments and personas that Jessica talked about. We can, zone in on that and kind of A/B test it and see which ones of those personas are actually clicking on, media. As far as like the click-throughs and the video completion rates tend to be more for streaming audio, streaming video as well. And then for your mobile and your desktop, definitely your mobile, because you can click on it right on the device. That's where we see more of that click-through. So it's a balance of the frequency of those mobile display and pre-roll videos that we all love to see. And then the streaming video is going to be a higher impact. As far as the airports goes, that's something that's really key to this campaign specifically because you're capturing travel enthusiasts in all those different airports, whether it's SeaTac or PDX or LAX. It's reaching them right where they are, and you're hitting a travel enthusiast. Yeah.
And just with the website visits, which most of these ads point to the website, I'd say about 60% are on mobile versus desktop, if that's helpful.
One other question. So when doing marketing, tracking kind of the results is like one of the hardest things to do, especially in this kind of arena, like with personas and all of that. I'm just curious, do we have anything, right? Like, how are we kind of determining if those folks are in fact coming to town?
Yes, I have a couple of different.
You want to answer? Oh, okay. So we're definitely looking at those geo-targets that you saw there, for example. So when you retarget, we know that we're reaching a group that is from another location, whether it's Seattle or Canada, and then they've driven, because we're geofencing the city of Anacortes as well. So it's like A is the input, Seattle, B is the output, that would be Anacortes. So you can track that back and forth. What's really most exciting about those personas is now we can divide them into those individual groups, target messages specifically, like you saw the rugged weekender, or the Freedom Cruiser. Those are definitely different kinds of groups, so they respond to different kind of messages and media. So if we are tailoring it to that, you can actually build the retargeting data off the individual groups and go, okay, the rugged weekender is way up. One of the other, like maybe the cultural collector, thank you, is not as high. So you're going to optimize more of your ads to the better performing groups.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters?
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
I think this will also be really useful for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee as it makes its decisions on allocations for next year. Do I understand correctly that you have extracted these personas from the demographic and other advertising data that you get? Did you invent them, or have you extracted them?
Mix of all of the above.
Okay.
Yep.
So I had.
Did you have one to add?
No.
Oh, okay, just checking.
No, I feel like maybe I fit into a couple of them. But, I appreciated Mr. Fantini's line of questioning because I had similar questions about how really you can tell, numbers of conversions. I definitely think it's an impressive breadth of advertising that you're doing. I understood that the Arts Festival did pretty well this year, and that they had retargeted a lot of their, now I haven't talked to Meredith about this, so some of the details may be wrong here, but I had understood that they'd retargeted a lot of their advertising southward because they were concerned about not being able to get BC residents to come in. And even though I think they perceived fewer BC residents, their sales were up. So does that tell us something? Does that tell us, I mean, assuming,
One of the
so those
things we're
premises are
watching is the
correct?
walk-in visitors at the visitor center,
Uh-huh.
and that has stayed at about 30% less Canadian visitors than we have had in the
Okay,
past. Yeah.
so that was also your experience that BC visitors were down. But if overall sales are up, does that mean we can do
Yes.
better by sending more advertising southward than northward?
I think probably when you look at it, you would definitely want to retarget, south, because, you got such a huge pool. That one map that I put up, showed it like heavily populated in like Everett. So that's, a very, targeted area. But, definitely want to include some of that BC traffic coming north. I know up in Bellingham, you're seeing more retail coming into Bellingham back from BC again. So, that's nice. So I think kind of a gradual, slope from there to add some more of that back into the mix. You're dealing with kind of a finite budget, so you want to look and see where you're getting the most effective response. And then we're also looking at dividing up those personas. So, you can't spend the same amount across every one of those personas. And that's where the A/B tests come in, because we're going to start this now. And by the 1st of January, we'll have basis for all of those personas to move forward with. So, some of them, we might, maybe push that down a little bit, not as high a profile persona, whereas these other 3 are. So, raise it over there.
Okay, yeah, I wonder
Yeah.
if people in the Seattle area or even further south are looking for someplace to go other than Canada as well. Because, I mean, I know we have
Yep.
just anecdotally decided not to cross the border if we don't have to, just because of the
Yeah,
hassle coming
yeah,
back.
yeah.
So maybe, hopefully that, is temporary. I appreciate the presentation and what you're doing here. I also like, and I think it bears mentioning because of the other contract that was on our agenda tonight, is I like that while the chamber is advertising for tourists, the Downtown Alliance is also advertising to our community to have them come out, including in the winter,
Yeah.
and keep restaurants afloat all year long, making sure that we solve that information gap so that people know there's stuff downtown that you should come see and you should come do and you should come eat. Absolutely. I think really we're doing pretty well here, all things considered, and I'd like to keep it that way. So thanks for your work, and hope to see you in front of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee later this year.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we will move on to item 6B. This is our water system plan. It's a status update, and it's a draft capital facilities plan. This is a presentation. So Mr. Ram will kick it off.
Not mine. All right, now we're ready. Mayor, Council, good evening. Andy Rayum, Public Works Director. Tonight and next week, we will be presenting the utility system plans because we use them to inform the 6-year CFP, Capital Facilities Plan. That is coming to you later in September, but we did a lot of, we call it planning, but the utility plans are really an engineered document that models your system, tells you where you have needs in your system, and builds a 20-year plan on how all the things that you should probably look to address in the next 20 years. Regardless, we still call it a plan. But the utility plans, we're bringing them forward now so that you get a kind of a precursor about like, well, why are these things in the capital facilities plan? The different projects that we identified. We felt to do that, it was important to bring the consultants in so they can give you a real high level explanation. Do give feedback if it's like too much information, but just some high level, like this is how we estimated what you needed in your system. Tonight, her last name is really hard to say, but Areli is here, and she'll still tell you her last name. She is with Corolla Engineers, and she's gonna provide the presentation. After she's done, we could take questions then, but we also have Rhonda Peck who's going to give up and give you the fiscal analysis. Basically, can you or can you not afford this with the current rates and that type of thing. We're doing that for water tonight.
Next week, we're coming with the general sewer plan. Same deal. We'll have the consultant come explain how they got to where they got to for all the 20 years of projects we recommend that you do. And then we'll do the fiscal analysis. Rhonda will come up and give the fiscal analysis. The only one that we didn't do this was we brought the stormwater master plan. And we didn't do the fiscal analysis part, but we did use what the stormwater master plan told us to put in the 6-year capital facilities plan. So we're going to have Rhonda again provide the fiscal analysis next week with the general sewer plan. Clear as mud? We good? Okay, so today we're just going to do the water system plan. Next week we'll go over the general sewer plan and then catch up the fiscal analysis on the stormwater system plan. Okay. With that, I'll hand it over.
Sandy. Good evening, everybody. I won't make you pronounce my last name.
Yeah, but you'll have to state it for the record so we can pretend like we can pronounce it
That
later.
you can pronounce it. Yeah, so my name's Orly Nabuno. I'm with Coral Engineers in our Seattle office, and I've been working with the city for the last few years on the water system plan update, and I'll kind of run through the process and where we're at right now. The first thing I wanted to start by is the water system is required by Department of Health, DOH. It's a requirement that utilities have to update and complete their water system plan every 10 years now per Department of Health. And Department of Health has actually a very stringent, detailed requirements document that needs to outline everything that needs to go in a water system plan. So you can see here, there's demand forecast, supply analysis, storage and pumping. There's a whole hydraulic modeling portion of the distribution system for water quality and operation and maintenance, right? And all of that ultimately culminate into what we call the prioritized CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, for the next 10 and 20 years. So how the vision of the utility is moving for water. So we'll walk kind of through some of the specific critical pieces here. So the main purpose has a couple elements to it. The first one is really documenting the state of the existing water distribution system. What are the facilities? What is in place right now in the system to supply water to customers? The second one is to evaluate the ability of that existing infrastructure to meet future requirements, future demand, and future needs of the utility. Thirdly is to determine what capital projects may be needed to really meet those future requirements that were identified. And then, like I said at the very beginning, the last kind of culmination of the plan is this 20-year CIP. We prioritize project on how the vision and strategy of the utilities is going to be moving forward. It's a big document, ultimately. If you have problems sleeping at night, I'm sure you can go read through it. You might not go through 11 chapters of it. But in the plan, there's 11 chapters right now, from introduction all the way to financial analysis. And they describe in detail the assumptions and all the work and analysis that was done to fulfill what DOH and WAC is required. So I'm going to start by just giving you a little high overview of what the infrastructure and utilities we're talking about here. This is the water system facilities. This is where the utilities has different system elements. So there's different pressure zones that supply water to customers at different elevations. There's 7 reservoirs that are storing water in the system. There's boosted pump station that are allowing us to boost water to higher elevation for different customers. And then there's 180 miles almost of distribution pipelines that range from very large diameter to smaller diameters that serve water to all customers. The other big important kind of evaluation that was done as part of this was a system plan is to look at demand. So what demand look like in the future for customers and for Anacortes in the next 10 and 20 years. We have a whole methodology that I'm not going to go into all the details, but really kind of the gist of it is looking at all the historical information, consumption, and production. So it's really tailored to city customers, not just industry standard. And we're kind of projecting based on different information like water use efficiency for future, climate change, any change in large users and customer and usage patterns to really tailor that to city customers. This is what the projection looks like. So there's a lot of lines on this graph. There is kind of the green elements, what we called ADD. That's the average day demand. That's the average consumption or demand of the utility over 365 days over the average of the year. And so right now, the utility average is around 17, 18 MGD. In the future, we're looking at 22, 23 million gallon per day. That's the middle line here. The second element in this graph is the purple kind of element, and that's what we call the MDD. That's the maximum day demand. So on a hot day in the summer, maximum day, that's how much water customer uses for that. So it's much higher, right? People use a lot more water when it's hot and whatnot. So, and we're looking at 10 year and 20. So we're looking at year 2034 and year 2044. So the whole plan is built around those timeframes. As part of this water system plan, we evaluate all the different facilities that are included in the system, from distribution transmission pipelines to reservoir, pump station, even the water treatment plant. And the way that evaluation is done is looking at criteria. So looking at what is the requirement, is the need for the different elements, and comparing it and making estimates on is there like deficiencies or issues and we're not able to meet that. The very first one is supply. Do we have enough supply in the future to meet customer demand? And the criteria for that is the max day demand, so your maximum day in the middle of the summer, plus the maximum fire flow. And that's looking at capacity of the plant as well as water rights, how much water you legally can use to serve your customers. The second element that was evaluated as part of this plan is what we call pumping analysis. So there's different zones in areas within the system, and there's pump stations that are allowing to supply higher elevation customers. So we want to make sure that those stations have enough capacity to supply the customers where it needs to be. And so there's two types of evaluation here. We have what we call an open zone. So that's if you have a reservoir in the zone, you need to supply your maximum day demand. And then we have closed zone. So if you have a pump station that pumps without a reservoir, there's no buffer in the zone, then you actually need to be able to meet the peak hour demand. So if you think about the maximum day, that's the maximum hour of that maximum day, plus fire flow. The third element we looked at is storage. So there's 7 reservoirs in the system. Do we have enough volume in your tanks to serve different purposes? One is equalizing, which is in the middle of the summer. The tanks are helping with demand and bouncing back up and down to be able to meet the extra demand. And then is there enough storage to meet emergencies? And that's your standby, which is if you have loss of power or any unusual conditions you need to mitigate, and fire as well for firefighting. There's more. The last element we looked at, and a lot of it is used with the hydraulic model. The city has a really robust hydraulic model of their water distribution system. It's looking at pressure and it's looking at velocity. Velocity is sticking with 8 feet per second in the pipelines, not exceeding that. And then minimum pressures, we want to make sure that at the peak hour demand, so the maximum hour of that really hot day in the summer, every single customer meter needs to at least have 30 PSI at the meter. And under a fire flow condition, so let's say you have this fire, hydrants are flowing, it needs to be 20 PSI at the very minimum and not being lower than that. And so the other thing looking at fire flow is the requirements. So the city has different requirements based on the type of customers, from single family to commercial, industrial, and the refineries. And then here, there's a note on this table about the South Fidalgo system, which is really meant for the newly acquired area in the south area that was lowered for 500 gallons per minute for single family rural areas. So we'll run all this analysis. We're done with this. We identified deficiencies, so areas that did not meet any of those criteria. And part of the plan is to develop projects and mitigations for that. So there's capacity and improvements projects that really allow us to put recommendations together to meet those requirements for pressure and fire flow and all those different pieces. And there's projects related to repair and replacement, right? So capacity of the system is one thing, but condition is also very important, and making sure those assets are maintained as they grow older. And at the end of the CIP, you'll see this three-phasing, what we call the short term, which is the 0.6 years, which is what Andy was referring to, the CFP, and that's what was used for that. And then there's a mid-year, 6 to 10, and then long-term, 10 to 20. And so there's been a whole conversation with city staff, and based on the analysis, to prioritize all the projects into those different time buckets. So I'm going to run through at a high level these different categories. There's been projects for pump stations, projects related to pressure zones, storage, pipeline valves, projects related to water treatment plants, and what we called general and programmatic projects that we'd like to put in plans for strategy and future vision. So the first section is pump station recommended projects. There's 9 of them. I'm not going to go into all of those in detail, but the gist of it is those recommendations are needed for redundant fire flow service into the different zones, and making sure that we have enough pressure. So they're allowing to upgrade certain pump stations or creating new pump stations to boost pressure that didn't have, customers that didn't have sufficient pressure, especially at 20 and 30 PSI. Another project that is related to pressure zone, again, those are all related to minimum pressure of 30 PSI, and that really is a Department of Health requirement that you have to provide 30 PSI at a minimum for every single customer. So those are basically creating new zones, creating new areas that are served at higher elevation to mitigate those issues. Storage, so those are the tanks, the storage tanks in the system. The recommendation was to decommission existing tanks that didn't have enough elevation and enough volume to serve the zone, and replacing that with new pump station, which I showed you. And then the other ones are based with condition-based project, so repair and rehabilitation and replacement of assets that are aging. Another, I'm going to call it bucket of project, is related to distribution system pipeline, and that's related mostly to be able to meet the fire flow requirements at the minimum pressure of 20 PSI. And there's about 20,000 feet of pipe within the city that are recommended to be upsized to be able to meet those fire flow requirements. Another element was related to valves. So the system also have valves that allowing us to manage pressure, though they're pressure reducing valve or other types of valves. Most of them are being upgraded to supply more flow than they currently are providing for fire flow and pressure. There's a whole separate evaluation related to water treatment plant that was looked at, looking at both condition and capacity. And so there's about 18 projects on the list here. Why this project needed? Most of it is for aging, wear and tear, some safety and reliability, and a few plants improvements here. And they're all prioritized based on conversation with city staff and where we think those projects should be located in the CIP. And finally, what we call general programmatic projects. So they're kind of one-off projects. It could be things like a water system plan in the next 10 years. So every 10-year DOH requires you to do that again. It includes also any water security projects that were identified, various replacement elements, and looking at continuing replacing the water meters for Innotize and any pipeline replacement that are more condition-based on an annual basis. So that's probably the part. The next slide is what we really want to talk about is cost. How much is that all going to cost, right? So at the end of the plan, we put together what we call Class 5 cost estimate. Planning is at a very high level, right? We know on the design side, we're looking at a very high level, and that's what we call the X Class 5. They're minus 30 plus 80% accuracy, because there's so much we know at this point of the project. And that really follows industry standards, ENR and AAC professional guidance to develop cost at this level. So this is how the CIP looks. On the left side, there's the cost per project priorities. So for the next 20 years, looking at all those different evaluation, all the projects that are recommended, the total CIP equates to about $142 million for 20 years. They're broken down into 0 to 6, which is the high priority element. There's about 20 million of it. 6 to 10, which is kind of priority, but not as much, which is about 18. And then the long-term, 10 to 20 years, which is the second kind of longer term, is about 55 million. And then there's annual projects, which are going to be divided by year. They're not very specific yet. The city is going to work every year to identify what those look like, but we want to make sure we reserve some amount of capital cost to make those happen. And on the right side, what you see is the type of project. So we talked about distribution system piping and pressure zone rezoning, storage, treatment plants. So you can see kind of the spread of what those projects look like.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thanks. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the pie chart on the left and the annual $48.8 million. So that's over a 20-year period?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, you would divide that number by 20.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Could you repeat what was your accuracy on these class 5 estimates?
It's minus, I think I said 30. I think it's minus 50% plus 80%. So it could be double almost what it is, just for accuracy. And as you kind of dive into preliminary design and 30% design and 60% design, you move this project for a second final, right? So you're like refine the cost to something that you gain confidence in. So what's next? The city is working on finalizing the financial analysis, which is that last chapter that goes into the water system plan. Once that's complete, we'll pull all of 11 chapters and all of the appendices together. There's about 1,000 pages of those. And we'll submit what we called a city review draft for internal review. City staff will have time to go through all the chapters, review everything, make comments. We'll incorporate those into then what we call an agency review draft. That is going to go to Department of Health and all your agents and purveyors for review. Department of Health usually takes 90 to 180 days to review the plan. Then we'll get comments back from them. And then that's where we go through the final stage of it. So we'll incorporate all their comments and we'll put a final plan together that City Council will approve and go back to DOH for final approval for the next 10 years.
Mayor Miller?
All right, Ms. Moulton and then Mr. Walters.
Thank you. So adjacent purveyors, are those the city of LaConner, Oak Harbor, are those purveyors that we work directly with?
Correct. Everyone that your boundary touches, so county as well. And yeah, exactly. So everybody that you have an intertie with or just your boundary touch with.
Thank you.
Mr. Walters.
What kind of comments might we anticipate from Department of Health? Are they re-engineering the document, or what are they actually going to submit?
No, they'll ask for clarification mostly a lot of times, or specificity on some evaluation that they know of that they may not have seen in the plan. We've done through a lot of those approvals recently, so we kind of know what type of comments usually they'll come back with. We're able to mitigate that quite well ahead of time, but they always come back with new comments that are new. But usually it's mostly clarification on, why is this project needed, making sure that we address all 30 PSI minimum pressure in the short term. That's a big thing for them right now, and usually it's not a ton of comments.
So can we reasonably rely on the draft for the purpose of our capital facilities planning for the comp plan update?
Yes.
Okay.
We rarely see major edits between when we submit to DOH and the final.
Okay. And then to be clear, because this has come up in some other contexts, do we have any overall capacity problems with serving our anticipated development and demand over the next 20 years?
No, you guys are actually in a pretty good shape compared to a lot of utilities we've been working with. The big issue In some of those areas, that's why the rezone projects are minimum pressure, and then fire. And GOH is usually okay with moving some of those to 10 and 20 years and kind of address it as the needs come. So nothing too crazy. You don't need a new storage tank for capacity or new supply or anything like that.
And you showed us the table of contents, but there isn't, do I understand this right, there isn't a draft for us to review at this point?
Not yet.
Okay,
We're working through that, so we're very close.
okay.
Any other questions?
Ready to turn it over to Ron, Ms. Peck?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just one other quick question. So Mr. Walters touched on it a bit, but I really want to understand. So when you're coming up with this plan, you're looking at all of our regulations, our zoning, you know, because there's a lot of change that will be happening as far as like density, that type of thing. And so the plan that is taking all of that into account, and you're making sure basically that we're going to have enough water for fire suppression, pressure, that kind of thing. And this plan is going to call out where we don't have it and tell us what we need to get it.
That's correct. Yes, it's looking at, we work with the county to get population growth projections and employment to really kind of see what that growth looks like for 10 and 20 and come up with assumptions based on that. And you're correct. Those land use and zoning are used for fire flow and all those different pieces. So there's going to be lots of maps that are going to show where you're deficient and you can't meet those and what needs to happen to mitigate any of that.
Because that's one of the areas that I'm kind of most interested in, is we change some of our zones to more multifamily, or, you know, more toilets, more sinks, more water. Are we still going to be able to, with our current infrastructure, meet what we need to meet?
There are projects that are needed to get everywhere in the city up to those requirements. So there's about, I think, 20 of them, about 20,000 feet of pipes to upsize to make sure everywhere meets those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
And I feel it's important for the public to understand, when you're talking about upsizing, you're talking about pressure. You're not talking about the quantity, because that's the question that we
Correct.
always get.
It's
We're-
looking, yes, it's,
pressure
well,
and
it's
aging
kind of
system.
both,
Yeah,
actually.
you have to have the quantity
Yeah,
there,
so it's
but-
just making a bigger pipe. So we would replace a small pipe with a big pipe to increase the capacity in the pipe to serve that fire flow at the right pressure.
But I always immediately look, when you look at the the top end of your 40 million gallon requirement per day, 20, 30 years from now, I think of our water right of 55 million gallons of water, and I think of our capacity of our plants being able to meet that. And we're all good there.
You're all good there.
Thank you. Again, that's for the,
Yep.
I know most people in this room know that, but.
Yeah, you're overall in a really good shape. Like, you have sufficient supply for the future. We have sufficient water rights. Overall, you have sufficient capacity. There's just a few specific areas that need
Aging
upgrades.
infrastructure like everywhere else, and pressure requirements, and better ways to store and move the water around. Sorry.
Correct.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. No, you know, this was very informative. I'm looking forward to the next steps. And you and I had a sort of minor conversation before this started, a little tongue-in-cheek, so that was a joke. But, you know, the thing about this that I'm looking forward to, in that it identifies areas that we really, you know, may need to prioritize, but it identifies those areas that may, given limited resources, you know, we have to pick and choose and then make decisions as a city how best to serve the constituents that we serve. And in part of this that I think would be so useful too, as council and the city itself of people begin to make even deeper, more in-depth decisions about where development may need to be, you know, multi-housing development. We may begin to focus on regions that we want more multi-housing development, or, you know, infrastructural to be able to meet that capacity. And this information will be very useful to that, because I do foresee us as a city having to make those tough choices. You know, and, you know, I wish we did have unlimited resources, but we don't. And so at the end of the day, for maximum use of what we were intending to do to best serve the population, particularly if we are trying to sort of increase our housing, increase, the quality and sizes of housing, where it is, the flow to downtown, how all of those things work in tandem with one another. I think this will help us with that, because I do believe as a city we will need to make decisions about where we really want to focus our development in going up, or however we choose to do it. So I think that this would be very helpful. My vision, at least in limited fashion of knowledge about where we are in all of this, think about it. Look at all that we're proposing along our avenue. It's a big deal. And, particularly if we're trying to go up to and have the ability to transport people, scattered transit, just sort of the route of being able to get people downtown to events, for food, for recreation, walkability. Those things are critically important, especially with the demographics that we have. And those are the very people, I like to say the people above 50 are the ones that are bringing not only their dollars to the table, but their labor, whether they're in one organization or another, Soroptimist, Kiwanis, Rotaries, Eagles, just so many organizations that have a wonderful list of people that are willing to work and willing to donate. So, but part of that, at least in my mind, I am convinced from talking to any number of constituents and people that there is a group of people above 50 that want to downsize. They want to be closer so they can walk to the grocery store, get exercise in and all of that. So, part of this whole thing that we're looking at, where our projects are and where we decide to spend our money, part of that is that we're fully expecting to make those evaluations based upon maximum yield for what we needed to do. So I find this very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's really a roadmap, right? Things are going to change, and it's really a tool that is going to, I always say, like, you print the plan and it kind of goes out of date because something is going to change that we did not plan 2 years ago. And so it's really this roadmap to be able to adapt and make that happen for the future. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And Ms. Peck, are you going to come up and do this part? And you're not going anywhere, Ms. Ebenall, you're not going anywhere in case council has some follow-on questions. And Ms. Peck, when you're ready, and again, the challenge for council, of course, you're not going to get a final 1,000-page plan with a blessing from the Department of Health, but you are going to get a capital facilities plan this year that you're going to have to weigh in on. And so that's why Ms. Peck will be here to kind of tie that part in when you're ready.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mayor. Hello, City Council members. So Rhonda Peck, Finance Manager, City of Anacortes. As Andy mentioned, with the 20-year plans being looked at across the entire public utility or public works organization, we thought it would be a good idea to take a look at our services revenue and just see how things are lining up against the first 6 years of those 20-year plans. So I'll walk you through the graph in front of you. I have one slide, so don't dwell. I'll walk you through the different blocks. The bars are our expenses. So the first bar you see, those are our operating costs. The operating expenses right now are looking to grow 4% annually. Based that on historical costs, that seems to be kind of where we're running. So the lighter color box are our operating costs. The more variable box that you see in the brighter blue, those are our capital expenses. So again, this is based on the draft CFP that's been submitted. The next thing you'll see is, I'll talk about the pink line first. That's simply those two boxes added together. It says, here's what the revenue is that's going to be required to support the operating and the capital plans that are in place right now. The green dotted line is our services revenue. And what we've done here is we've modeled it with a 3% annual growth rate. We typically increase our rates based on CPI. Right now, CPI is running a little bit below 3. So we're just basing it on 3%, and we'll see where we land in October when we finalize those numbers. But the good news is with the water utility right now, if you look at the lines, things really do line up. You have a couple of years where things are above or below, but with the fluctuation of rates and with estimates on cost, we feel really confident that the 6-year expenses do align with our outlook for the services revenue.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
Thank you very much for bringing this information simultaneous with the project list. Do you anticipate an opportunity to review the individual projects on that list? Are we going to schedule sessions for that?
We will.
Like we have in the past?
Yeah, we will. Those, I believe they begin on September 8th. No, I'm sorry, September 15th. My apologies. Yeah, you'll have the first of 2 sessions on that night.
Okay, because in the presentation that we just saw, there weren't any numbers associated with individual projects, and plus there's quite the range that those prices ultimately could land in. But some discussion, I think, would be worthwhile on at least several of them. But this is really critical stuff here, to be able to look at revenue at the same time as expenses. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions? Oh, this is open for public comment. Anybody want to weigh in on the water system, 1,000-page water system plan? Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, again, more to follow. I know that was the intent of staff, is to get council start to think about where we have to do for our revenue to meet our capital requirements, plus our just running the system. So we will move on to item 6C. These are contract awards, multiple contract awards, treatment plant chemicals through 2027. Discussion item with possible action. Mr. Rayam.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you tonight are 7 contracts. I think that's a new record in one agenda item. To procure chemicals to clean wastewater through the wastewater treatment plant before discharging it to the Guaymas Channel, and chemicals to treat raw Skagit River water to make it safe and delicious drinking water. Every 2 years, the city requests bids from chemical distributors. The bid tabulation is attached to the council agenda packet. And this is our best way to provide the most cost-effective chemical delivery for the next 2 years. That's all I got.
Okay, yeah, hopefully council had a chance to take a look at that. Any questions for Mr. Rayam? I know he's got his staff here if we need to go deep. Council.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. So the 2 that weren't bid, that we didn't receive any valid bids for items 4C or 8C, what are next steps for those?
So I asked the same question, and the quantities of those that we receive are so low that we just get an estimate from distributors at the time that we need it. So yeah, nobody bid on it, but we can still get the chemicals. It's just a matter of just getting quotes and finding the cheapest price we can get at the time.
Okay, so for example, the 8C, the calcium nitrate, we can get it from Thatcher in 8,000 and 46,000 gallon amounts, and so presumably we can get it for 4,000 gallons for them too. It just won't be the same price.
Yeah, the price won't be fixed for the next 2 years. It'll be like when we needed it at that quantity, we can call and see what the best price we can get at the time.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mayor Miller. Unless there's any other questions about it or comment to move forward.
Mayor Miller?
Okay,
Sorry.
there's Mr. Fantini.
Mr. Fantini, sure.
Are there any potential, just kind of with supply chains, all of that fun stuff that's going on right now, any potential delays or anything that we should kind of be aware of, since obviously water chemicals are pretty important to that delicious tasting water?
Yeah, it's delicious. I really do think our drinking water is really good here. Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean that can't happen. So we've had other situations happen in the past here in Anacortes where we were running out of chemical, but we got it. So.
Okay.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young.
I move that the city council authorize the mayor to sign the contracts 25-168-IDS-001 through 25-168-IDS-007 for treatment plant chemicals for the 2025-2027 cycle.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Young, a second by Ms. Hubick to approve the contracts as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac, vote please.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Ms. Moulton,
Yes.
Ms. Hubick,
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next up is item 6D. This is ordinance 4096, State Environmental Policy Act, better known as SEPA, legislative actions. This is a discussion item with possible action. And we've seen this before, and Ms. Swetnam's going to give us some updates. Ms. Swetnam, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Miller, members of council, and members of the audience. So tonight is the second read of Ordinance 4096, which proposes to change the process for local appeals of SEPA threshold determinations for legislative or non-project actions. I've tried to address some of the questions that came up during last week's discussion, but please interrupt me if you have any specific questions. To review, the SEPA process requires that local agencies consider the environmental impacts of proposed actions. One thing that came out of last week's discussion that seemed to be a really important distinction to draw is the difference between project actions and non-project actions. So project actions involve discussions and decisions on a specific project. So that would be a subdivision, a long plat, any kind of a land use application, or a permit for a specific property. Those would be project actions. And this ordinance does not propose to make any changes with respect to any appeals related to SEPA evaluations of project actions. So I know there were some public comments that brought up some examples of, I think I read cottage housing or ADUs. Those would all be project actions. This ordinance wouldn't have any impact on the public engagement or process for those types of actions. The other type are non-project actions. So non-project actions, I think we can safely pretty much use the term legislative actions interchangeably. These would be decisions on policies, plans, or programs like comprehensive plan updates or development regulation changes, zoning changes, things that impact policy level decisions and not a specific project. Another point that came up during some of the discussions that seemed important to clarify is what is the decision that this ordinance actually talks about appealing. And that is the SEPA threshold determination that is made in Anacortes by the planning director. So council, if you follow the proposed recommendation from last week, would not be hearing an appeal of its own decision. The SEPA threshold determination is always made by Mr. Coleman in this case. And what the threshold determination does is looks at whether the action requires an environmental impact statement or not. So as we talked about last week, really two options for legislative decisions: a determination of significance, meaning there's a likelihood that there could be environmental impacts of the proposed comprehensive plan update or development regulation, in which case an environmental impact statement or more involved environmental analysis would have to happen, or a determination of non-significance, meaning that Mr. Coleman finds that the proposed comprehensive plan update or development regulation likely won't have environmental impacts that trigger an EIS. I'm going to get to a flow chart here too. So hopefully we'll get at this multiple different ways to make it clear. So the current code, appeals of SEPA threshold determinations are all heard by the hearing examiner, whether it's a project action or a non-project action. This causes the real problem that we're here to solve is that there's, for legislative actions, if they have to stop the process and go to an appeal of by the hearing examiner who doesn't participate in the public process, isn't involved in the legislative process at all, it causes delay, and that's what we've seen happen with a current ordinance that's been on the shelf for some time pending an appeal to the hearing examiner of the threshold determination. Another, I think, point that got brought out last week, but I want to reiterate, is the public will always have input on legislative actions because they are all done by council. So there was some comment that that maybe this change would take away the public's ability to be engaged in these processes, and that's really not the case, because council will always talk about legislative issues in a public meeting in front of the public. What we call that public engagement is going to look a little bit different, but there will be public engagement for legislative actions.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you, Ms. Swetnam. So that public engagement will be in the form of public comment, public hearings, planning at the planning commission
Correct.
level, at the council level. So it's the public process that we go through for all of these things would not change.
Correct, yeah, good summary.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially, I mean, we're talking about comprehensive plan updates and development regulations. There is a public hearing that happens at the planning commission level where there's a comment period. Mayor Miller just talked about the time frame for the public comment period being open right now for this comp plan. But then Planning Commission makes a recommendation that comes to City Council for those types of legislative issues. So then there's another opportunity for the public to provide comment and input at both the Planning Commission and the City Council level. And I don't think anybody wants to change or take away from that in any way, so.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Well, I think the other important point about that is that we couldn't if we wanted to.
Correct.
Because it's required by state law, by the Open Public Meetings Act for final actions before council, and it's required by GMA to have a public participation program for adoption of development regulations or comp plan amendments. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there
Great,
just
thanks.
isn't the outcome that the 2 comments we received seems to expect.
Yeah, and I think having a hearing examiner, as I said before, hear an appeal on a legislative action really has seemed to be unnecessary and kind of disconnected from the legislative process. So this is an attempt to to make things move through the process more efficiently and really focus that engagement with the public on those areas where that's meaningful and really has an impact on the outcome. So in the packet, as I said I would do last week, there are 2 options for how to address this. The first option 1 has these threshold determinations coming to City Council for an appeal to be heard at the same time that Council considers the underlying ordinance. Again, these SEPA threshold determinations are made by the planning director. The appeal would be then of the planning director's determination heard directly by City Council, along with any other public comment about whatever the legislative action is. And the draft in the packet under option 1 provides some process for that. Again, it would not change the appeal of threshold determinations for project actions like specific land use decisions, large plats that might be in the works on the Anacortes waterfront, any other development or specific project actions would still have an appeal process that goes to the hearing examiner. The other option is to eliminate the local appeal altogether. That doesn't mean that these decisions can't be appealed. It just means there isn't an appeal here, that those determinations could be appealed along with the ordinance or underlying legislative action to the Growth Management Hearings Board. So those are sort of the 2 options, and I'm going to get a couple more charts here. So again, the distinction that's really important here is we're not making any changes to anything in the red box, which is project actions like subdivision, land use permits. There will still be an appeal to the hearing examiner of Mr. Coleman's threshold determination on those types of actions. This would only change the appeal process for non-project or legislative actions like comprehensive plan updates and development regulations. And so to give you an example, I'm going to get out of this one and go to this one. So I wanted to kind of walk you through the process of what a development regulation would look like as it moves through the process. It hopefully will kind of help understand what we're changing. So if there is a development regulation, and a good example is changing zoning regulations, that gets drafted as an ordinance, and that ordinance, the process of that working through the procedures starts with a public notice that gets published, and that kicks off a public comment period. The public, anybody in the public can provide comment on the ordinance itself. And then while that notice period is open, while the comment period is open, the city typically starts the process of environmental review, which the city is required to do under SEPA. So environmental review, this is all the teal boxes here. That begins with a SEPA checklist, and I put in the packet sent to you all a copy of the SEPA checklist. There's a lot of stuff in the SEPA checklist, and I think the majority of it is really geared towards identifying the environmental impacts of project actions. But there is a section D at the end that asks questions geared towards environmental impacts of legislative actions. And so the SEPA checklist then informs Director Coleman's determination. So he's going to look at that SEPA checklist and he's going to say, based on the information that's provided in response to this question, I think there is or is not going to be a significant enough environmental impact that we need to do an environmental impact statement. That's the threshold determination that the planning director makes. So under the current code, that can be appealed to the city hearing examiner. If the hearing examiner upholds the appellant's appeal, meaning the hearing examiner says, you appellant have appealed this threshold determination and I think you're right, then Mr. Coleman would have to modify his threshold determination. And if that meant that an environmental impact statement had to be prepared, that would happen. So we would come back to the green and kind of work through the process. If, however, the hearing examiner said, I think you're wrong on your appeal, and I think that Mr. Coleman's threshold determination is correct, then that would be the end of the local appeal, and the project would continue through the process. So once the environmental review is complete, then there would be a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. So again, public comment period has been open this entire time. The public hearing allows the public to provide comment at the meeting and in writing. Based on that public hearing, the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to City Council whether Council should or should not adopt, or whether they should modify the proposed ordinance. City Council then has an additional opportunity for public comment at the council level. And then once council does the work that you all do, you listen to the comments of the public, maybe you make changes to the ordinance, then the ordinance gets adopted by council. At that point, if somebody wants to appeal that ordinance, they would appeal that development regulation to the Growth Management Hearings Board. This would also include if they did not like the outcome of the hearing examiner appeal, that could then also be brought up at that point. But if we eliminate this yellow box over here, people will still have the ability to appeal that threshold determination along with the ordinance to the Growth Management Hearing Board. So it's not that those decisions won't ever be able to be questioned, they'll just go to the Growth Management Hearings Board rather than the hearing examiner locally. So that's our recommendation. That process seems to be a little bit clunky and has in the past delayed the adoption of important ordinances. And so staff is recommending that council make a change to one of the two options that were in the draft in the packet. And I think the discussion was had last week that it's a little bit of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Either way, it captures some efficiency to allow these important legislative things to continue to move through the process without delay. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and Mr. Coleman is also willing, I'm sure, to answer questions.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I think, I'm at least speaking from it's a lot clearer. So thank you for the work that was done. This is an asterisk item. I think before I turn it over to council's discussion, any member of the public wish to comment on this item? Okay, and you get 3 minutes to comment on the item. It's a continuous comment. I mismanaged this last week, and it's not, the council gets to Q&A. You get to comment, but I guess if you're smart enough, you could put rhetorical questions in, and council might ask those later. So start your
I'm ready for that. I met with most of council, so they know how annoying I am.
Okay, so state your name and where you live, and make sure the microphone's on, please.
Microphone is on. My name is Mark Nyhart. I live in Anacortes, 1616 28th Street. My concern of taking any of these steps out, it costs a lot of money for the individual then to make an appeal. All of a sudden now the person that's trying to appeal something within that process, they have to get an attorney, a couple $100 an hour, $400 an hour, whatever that costs. So by reducing the steps earlier on where the individual can make an appeal, it puts the burden, takes the burden off the city and puts it on the individual who might not be financially capable of making that appeal. So by doing that, you don't have the appeal. If you have to go appeal in front of the Growth Management Act as an individual, how much is that going to cost? So my put is, again, that appeal process should take, like it is apparently today, should take early on up front where it can be addressed at a local level and a level where the resident doesn't have to hire an attorney. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it. Anybody else before I turn it over to council for question, discussions, comments? All right, council. Sorry, nobody online. Council.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
I think Mr. Nyhart's point is well taken, and maybe we can expand on that a little bit because, and maybe someone can answer some of these questions. Do we currently charge a fee for appeal to the hearing examiner on a non-project legislative SEPA threshold determination question?
That's a great question.
Obviously, we could establish a fee if we don't charge a fee, but my anticipation is the cost of the city provision of the hearing examiner would be $5,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, that's probably about right. I believe there is an appeal fee if I'm right, but I don't think it's significant.
I could check the unified fee schedule, but I did just Google what the petition fee is for the Growth Management Hearings Board, and there is no fee for a petition for review.
Yeah, it's also the case that you don't technically have to be an attorney to appear before the Growth Board, although in defense of attorneys, you should probably hire one. But someone who's currently practicing, I guess. The important thing here, though, I think, is that if you get into the appeal track, there will be fees somewhere. The city will be incurring them, or the appellant will be incurring them. But if we're on the public comment track, there aren't those fees, and you can make the same arguments. I mean, I think that's a really important component in this. Any member of the public has that opportunity before the Planning Commission and then also before the City Council to make the argument that, this legislative action is going to have some significant environmental impact. You don't get a super public comment opportunity because you paid an appeal fee, but you get the same opportunity that everybody else does, which is to make all those comments, and maybe city council evolves the ordinance, the legislation, because it's always legislation, in response to those comments. So I don't see in either option A or option B a reduced participation ability for the public. And in option B, it's very straightforward because there's no super public comment opportunity for the guy that pays the appeal fee, which is why I think I prefer option B. But I really appreciate the presentation and the clarifications on who makes the decision, and also the fact that we're not talking about project actions at all.
So I just got confused because I'm trying to get to where council takes action on one of these options, and when you said option A and B, I'm looking at option 1 and 2.
Sorry. 1 and 2, yeah. Yeah, same order, A and B, 1 or 2.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, all right, Council.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
Thank you so much. This is a very clearly nuanced and complicated issue for those of us that are relatively new to these types of things. I'm trying to really understand the why behind this, and I think what I'm hearing is that right now it's a slow process and we're trying to speed it up. Is that, I don't want to mischaracterize, but.
I think what we're trying to do is to eliminate roadblocks to having these ordinances and legislative actions move through the process. Having an appeal to the city hearing examiner takes some things out of the city and the public's control about working through these legislative items. And we've seen some issues in the past 2 years with having hearing examiner appeals, and so what has happened as a result of that is we have an ordinance that's been kind of languishing for a good portion of the year. So I guess in a sense it is trying to speed it up. I think it's trying to align the process on these legislative matters with the real work that needs to happen, while eliminating kind of some unnecessary process that really, from what we can tell, it doesn't give the public additional opportunity to engage, because these legislative items are already a public process anyways.
So when you say it doesn't give them additional opportunities to engage, if right now we have a hearing examiner and then all of these other steps, does it not, by taking away the hearing examiner, actually lessen the options?
Yeah, and maybe that's it. Maybe my comment, it takes away the appeal before the hearing examiner, but eliminating the hearing examiner appeal doesn't take away the public's opportunity to engage on legislative matters, because the real decision makers are council on these legislative matters. So, regardless of the outcome of a threshold determination appeal, council could decide to modify ordinances or comprehensive plans at any point in response to public comment and engagement.
Okay. One of the other things that I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around is we're talking about the difference between project appeals and legislative or ordinance appeals. And one of the things that I'm just kind of struck by, I think it's important for us to have all of the same options available, or I should say us, the public, to have all of the same options available to them at kind of the ordinance legislative level that they do at the project level. And for me, the reasoning behind that is I feel like a lot of times we will have projects that come up and they will meet a code or they will meet an ordinance, and they're like, well, I never knew about that ordinance change, or I never knew, and we have to say, well, you should have been there when we were talking about the ordinance, or you should have been there because it's a little late now, it's in place. And so I think it's kind of important for us to keep that part of it. When it comes to, can you put back up the two options again?
Yes.
Sorry.
No. This one, option one?
Yeah, so that's
Councilman?
option one.
Mhm. So this would have a local appeal go to council, and then option two would be to eliminate the local appeal altogether.
But both of those options eliminate the process of going to a hearing examiner.
Yeah, so option one, instead of there being a yellow box off to the side that says hearing examiner in it, that appeal would go to council when it goes to council.
Okay.
So it would, I mean, it would be the appeal, but it would be not by a separate hearing examiner. It would be heard by council when council considers whatever the development regulation or comp plan update is.
Okay, and one last question, and thank you for indulging me the time.
Oh.
When you said that we're having, or that there have been some roadblocks or some setbacks or some problems, let's just call it, with going to the hearing examiner, is that mostly around scheduling and things happening in kind of a timely fashion, or?
Yes, we had a hearing examiner on contract, and that person had some issues and had to drop out of the position partway through a case, and so it's left a number of jurisdictions in Western Washington scrambling a little bit to find hearing examiner services. I think the counties run into the same issue. I think there are other cities that have run into that as well. And it created some challenges that have caused some delays in getting an ordinance that we need to get passed under state law adopted.
Okay.
So.
I'm inclined to actually support the first option. I've always been a big advocate of public involvement, public comment, public options, the public to have their chance. And I know that at times it can seem redundant when we allow multiple opportunities for people to offer their comments or their appeals. But I actually kind of am okay with that, because I would rather have a citizen that feels like that they have been heard throughout multiple parts of the process and been engaged with it, even if the answer is no, than to take away opportunities. And I understand there are opportunities that continue on through the process for engagement, but I think bringing that in at the beginning is important. So if we're going to do one of these, I would be more inclined to support the first option.
Sure.
So I'll get to you in just a second, Ms. Hubick. Sorry, I just got to try to provide some historical context, since I think maybe myself and Mr. Walters might have been the only ones on council when we changed to the hearing, when we brought a hearing examiner on. Anybody remember what year that was? And prior to that, did we have a hearing examiner? Obviously, I believe the answer is no, we did not. That wasn't even that was not in our flow chart.
It wasn't. It was. There was no hearing examiner before, and that was. I believe it was 2015 or 2016.
2016.
2016, okay. So just for that context, I think it's important.
And I certainly don't mean to convey that hearing examiner is bad. Hearing examiners are professional decision makers and do a good job and an important work, especially dealing with complicated land use issues. We use them currently for issues relating to telecommunication facilities, and that's good because they have the level of expertise to understand, the legal challenges there. But in this case, there's no specific expertise that comes along with evaluating an appeal on a legislative issue of a SEPA threshold.
Yeah, and I've got to make a
determination.
comment on that as a former. You can't. You get the legislators that you vote for. And the hearing examiner, we brought the hearing examiner for projects because they had the expertise in land use decisions.
Right.
Sorry, the people you elected, that's what you get, and they can make legislative decisions that you don't like sometimes, and that's just the rub. Sorry, Ms. Hubick.
Thank you. I just wanted to pose kind of a hypothetical, because that's how I understand things. So for option one, let's just say that February 1st happens on a Monday, council puts forward an ordinance that's going to change industrial zoning to suddenly include housing. And Director Coleman, 2 weeks later, on another Monday, says, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do this. And there are members of the public who say, that sounds like a terrible idea because it's going to be noisy and probably smelly, and industrial zoning is meant to be industrial. So then following what's in the packet, there's another deadline of 14 days or 21 days. And so then those people would come to a council meeting to have their appeal heard on a Monday in another 2 to 3 weeks. And then council decides what happens from that appeal, and then whether or not the ordinance to change zoning to include housing, what passes or not, right? It's much more of a, I don't want to say a forceful public comment, but it's more paperwork involved to influence a decision that was put forth by council, approved by a director, disapproved by the public, and then coming back to make a resolution.
So, yes. So the decision that would be appealed would be John Coleman would say, you've got your industrial to residential zoning ordinance, and Director Coleman says, I think there are no environmental impacts of that. So I'm making a threshold determination of non-significance, no environmental impacts whatsoever. And somebody says, well, wait a minute, I can think of a lot of environmental impacts related to that. Whether or not I think the ordinance is a good idea, I think we need to look at the potential environmental impacts of that. And so then what would happen is that ordinance would go to the Planning Commission for public hearing. And then when it came to council for consideration, you all would start with a procedural, consideration of the appeal of that determination that there's no environmental impacts. You would make a decision on that at the same time that you decided whether or not to adopt the ordinance.
That's super helpful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who haven't we heard from on council? Anybody? All right, option 1, option 2, no option.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
I have a preference for option 1, personally.
All right, staff hasn't gone with the recommendation, so.
Mayor Miller?
Mr.
I have one
Fantini.
other question. So when we're talking about ordinances because again, for me, the important thing is not to be fast, it's to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question would be, the ordinances that we're talking about that are being held up, or that could potentially be held up, are these like emergency situations, or are they inconvenient because they're taking too long?
Well, if we're talking hypothetically, it could be either one, right? If it's, the example that we have right now is an ordinance that would adopt time limitations on how long the city can take to review project applications, and that's required under state law. We were supposed to have that adopted by January 1st of 2025, but we haven't, because we're still dealing with this appeal that's pending. So I would say in that case, it's somewhere in between, right? It's more significant than just inconvenient, but the city's not going to burn to the ground if we, there's a potential of liability for the city if we don't get these things done. There are certainly, you can imagine, timing impacts with the comprehensive plan updates. We've got some things that have to get done on a time frame, and then development regulations that follow have to get adopted. And so I don't think, I don't think it's about getting it done quickly. It's about getting it done in a way that is efficient. And, if we go back to my chart here, whether you take this yellow block away or not, there's a public notice period and a public comment period. There's a public hearing at the Planning Commission level, and then there's another opportunity for public comment and engagement at the City Council level. So I think, you know, that this is, and in some ways, I mean, if you have an appeal to the hearing examiner of a threshold determination, that's really just a limited discussion that only involves the interested parties. Like, we don't have hearing examiner hearings in front of council chambers open to the public, because that's not what an appeal is. It's a specific, you know, process based on an appeal brought by one person. So if those discussions about threshold impacts were done at the, you know, at the public hearing level or the city council level, I mean, in some ways, there's more public engagement because those things are getting discussed publicly, if that's helpful.
Mayor Miller.
All right, Ms. Hubig, or sorry, Ms. Moulton, and then Mr. Young.
Thank you. Ms. Swetnam, I think that your point about having these conversations and these discussions publicly in the form of public hearings, public comment, that we're all privy to, that we all see, that are recorded, that we all discuss, having, and we're talking about the planning director's threshold determination.
Correct.
And so then it's up to council and the public. If the public disagrees, they bring that to us, and this is the forum in which we discuss that and consider all the viewpoints and make a decision. We're the next step up from the planning director. And I think that's very valuable. Like, to Mr. Fantini's question, this one appeal is happening at the hearing examiner. We don't know what's happening. No one has public input. There's no chance for us to discuss it publicly. So it is actually, in my view, removing the opportunity for us to act as a community with our constituents to determine what we think is the best path forward. So I am in favor of removing that step, considering everything that we're talking about now. Thanks.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. And Ms. Moulton, just to make sure I'm clear on what you said, I understood the points and the sentiment around it. Is it that you were in support of number 1 or number 2? A or B? Sorry about that.
No,
Right.
no, it's one or
Okay,
it's
okay,
one or
good,
two.
Good. Thank you.
I am fine with either one.
Yeah. You know, to that sentiment, I think you said it wonderfully well when you said 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So for me, as an elected person, public servant, one of the things, given our size and where we are as a city, is to make sure that the public feels that they are involved and that their voice is heard and that they have multiple opportunities to sort of come forward and make their determination. And I think that the mayor said it wonderfully well when he said that all of us here are elected by you to represent viewpoints and to bring that forward as best as we can. So, you know, I do think, though, that given our size, I'm really leaning toward the first process. And you know, and it's not as if we can't, in discovering later that, you know, we're kind of getting caught up in, you know, a lot that's not happening or flowing the way we want it to, because I think that this is an unusual problem that occurred because of an employee making, you know, changing that. But right now, I don't know if we have a problem. I think that for now, for me, if we determine later that we want to change it, oh, okay, you know, we bring the evidence forward, we'll talk to the public, we'll talk about it, and we'll weigh it, and then we'll make a decision. So I concur with, I think, Ms. Hubig and Mr. Fantini, and I would assume Ms. Moulton. She was 50-50. So, but I do think, though, that unless there's some big reason, I think we can change it later if we discover it's not working for us. And if, and you know, I'm okay either way, but I just think right now, The public wants to make sure that they're heard, and whether or not they are actually, and I think that you've shown multiple opportunities for them to have their say, multiple times for them to have their input, multiple places that their viewpoint will be added in to the decision that's made by the council, okay? So with that, I don't see a big problem. I really don't. So because of that, I'm, leaning toward number one.
Well, it's all making sense to me because without a staff recommendation, I was going to recommend option 2, and the vast majority of council is going with option 1. So that sounds lining up. Mr. Walters.
Thank you. I think Ms. Moulton put a pretty nicely fine point on it here that under the current circumstance, an appellant can hold up the whole process and they basically take it out of public view. And I would prefer that they come make their arguments in public, which they can do under option A or B, right? And in fact, on the ground, there may be very little difference perceptible to almost anyone between A and B, except you need to pay a fee for option A.
1 and 2. Sorry, 1 and 2. Sorry, we got Exhibit A. 1 and 2.
I'm going to probably mess that up throughout the rest of the comments here. But yes, there are probably little distinction on the ground that anyone would be able to tell between option 1 or 2, except a fee should be required, as probably is in the fee schedule. No? Yes? $200 for you to file an appeal, but then you still make the same comments in front of council. So it's sort of a distinction without a difference, but it doesn't matter too much to me. I think one of the important takeaways, though, for the public that's looking and trying to figure out what is all this about, a couple of years ago we adopted an ordinance that did some permit streamlining with respect to daycare. And pretty important in our community, pretty important in a lot of communities, because there's not enough daycare available and the government ought to get out of the way. It's very possible that a frequent litigant could say, I don't like that, and I'm going to appeal it on the basis of SEPA, and then we're going to go to the hearing examiner, and the city's going to spend $5,000 to $10,000 contracting with a hearing examiner to hear my appeal, and we'll hold up that whole process. Meanwhile, we are up here wanting to do the work of the people through our legislative ability, and we're held up because it's off with the hearing examiner someplace. I don't have a problem with people making that argument, especially if it's legitimate. I do have a problem if it's illegitimate. But if somebody wants to make that illegitimate argument, I would like them to do it from that podium to us and to the public so that everyone else can see that that argument is illegitimate as well. That will happen in some circumstances. There will also be legitimate disputes, but all of those should happen in public, and I think that we are achieving that through adoption of this ordinance as presented. So it makes a lot of sense to me. In other jurisdictions also do not provide for threshold determination appeals on legislative matters. There's really more and more of that going forward. So I think we have charted the right course here, and we can get this done and provide a clear process for everybody.
All right, so I think everybody on council has spoken, and I've spoken way too much on this, but the logic for me is, of course, I like less words as somebody who's got to enforce the, make sure the staff is executing option 1, but I think I've heard there's actually some logic there. But council, your pleasure, asking you to make a motion to approve the ordinance and then select the option, I think would be helpful, and the staff would be able to.
That'd be helpful.
Clear enough. So, council.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Hubick.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 4096, updating Title 18 of the Anacortes Municipal Code regarding appeals of SEPA threshold determinations for non-project actions using option 1.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Hubick and a second by Mr. Fantini to approve ordinance 4096, and that's adopting Exhibit A, option 1. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciak, vote please.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
you.
thank you. Good discussion. On to item 6E. This is Amendment 1 to interlocal agreement for Depot Market Plaza expansion project funding. This is a discussion item with possible action, and Mr. Lunsford's already ready to go. Mr. Lunsford.
Thank you, Mayor Miller, council members, ladies and gentlemen. So this interlocal is one that you have approved. It is the one to contract with accepting the grant from Skagit County to build a depot expansion plaza, or what we're calling the Maritime Plaza now, in the area located in red on your maps. So that's where the new Market Street will curve just to the north by Alto Americas Park, east of the Preston. So the reason I'm coming to you tonight is I have to extend the timeline because we are needing to do a shoreline substantial development permit, which will require about up to 2 months of public comment, appeal process, et cetera, before I can go forward on it, because we are in, oops, that's my pretty picture. We are in the shoreline jurisdiction just a little bit. So we need an extra 2 months to take our time to get through that process for public comment and appeal or whatever we need to have, college review. And we still think we can meet our timeline to open by market season, but it's going to be a little tight. So March 31st was my previous timeline. With the delay of about 2 months, I asked the extension till May 31st of 2026. We think we can beat it, but weather dependent, I didn't want to risk it. If I get snow, et cetera, it would slow down my timeline. So this is no cost to us. It's just extending it by 2 more months. That's my request. The county has agreed to that. Your authorization will allow the mayor to sign it.
Council.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. Just a quick check-in about the expansion. Will that take some of the farmers market vendors out of the street, or will it be additional to that?
We hope we'll take some of them out of the street. If that's their desire, they'll have utilities at this new one. Oops-a-doodle.
Bless you.
Yeah, so along the west side, where my cursor is, about to be, you'll have 3 pylons with water and electricity, 50 amp service. We'll try to align them so the nice people in oars can get their boats in and out from underneath the Preston. They like to back up there and pull them out, we learned, but we think we can align those and no damage to those utilities. That would allow the trucks to come in and park along here, or other vendors with water, et cetera, and to take them out of 6th Street if that's their desire, but just give them more options, largely for expansion, because they have expanded so much. So that would just give them more options, a nice water view, nice intermixing with the event center and the improvements the port has made in their North Basin Development Plan.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini.
Thank you for the clarification around the boats that are underneath the Preston. I know the Anacortes Community Boating Group, formerly the Anacortes Waterfront Alliance, will be happy to hear that they can still store and get those boats out. That was my question. I have no other problem with this.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Well, I think we are fortunate that we can get an extension. So thanks to the county for that. I move that the council authorize the mayor to execute Amendment 1 to the interlocal as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Ms. Hubick to amend the interlocal as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac, vote please.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Ms. Hubick?
Yes.
Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. No further business before the council. I'll adjourn tonight's meeting. Have a great night.